and welcome to The Olive Tree. I'm Julia Fisher, and with me on the programme today is Ofer Amitai, joining us from Jerusalem. Ofer is a pastor of a congregation called El Roy, and also the director of the Israel Prayer Center. So when it comes to finding out what God is doing in Israel, Ofer is one of the people I turn to. Ofer, thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be with you.
Now, we're talking to each other in mid-July 2022. Like Britain, Israel is facing an election, but in your case, another election. Is this the fourth or fifth election in 2 years?
Fifth, yeah.
Fifth election in 2 years. So, Ofer, my first question to you is, what has happened to bring this about? Can you just explain what's going on in your nation?
I don't know if anyone can really, but, in thinking about your questions, and some of them, have asked for them, I think that it would be helpful for us to put like a title over what's happening, not just in Israel generally, and that is Israel, whose vision is going to come to pass. And it's obvious that we are experiencing some of the same things that other nations are experiencing politically, America for sure, which is, I don't know how to exactly term it, but there is, everything's become atomized. Everything is just blown to pieces. And each party, each group of people is basically pulling for their own understanding and vision of what their nation should be. And in Israel, that has become very, very pronounced. For instance, just with thinking about the coalition that we've had for the last year, you see the different parties and how, there is the far right, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, who are really kahanis. They are. They want a. They want a kingdom. They want a, how is it termed? They want a Jewish theocratic state in which there's no room for non-Jews, no voting rights for them. They're very extreme. There also can be violent. There's that side. There is the center right and views between Bennett and Netanyahu. All of them, number one, wanting, first of all, the position, and secondly, believing that they are the ones to lead Israel, and only they have the vision for Israel. So we see such a separation, and it's just really a fight about whose vision is going to come to pass. We have the left as well with Lapid, Meretz. You have center left, you have left. It doesn't matter, but and then you have the Arab parties who have their own vision, and in some ways, Ra'am, for instance, which had been in the government until now, has had to prove to the Arab constituencies that they're not being a lackey of Israel. So they have their own vision, and the Arab people have their own vision, and it's just reflected in a fifth election in 3 years.
But that's a very wearying thing for you to cope with. Are you confident that this next election, are people confident that this next election will produce a positive result, an overwhelming result, a strong government?
Seeing the players in in the field, it seems like we're going to have some more of the same. Also, you have to realize that, for instance, for Likud and Netanyahu, there is also within the Likud a real, there's a part of the Likud that does not want Netanyahu to be running for prime minister. There is others are 100% behind him, but he is battling in the courts, and I think in any Western country that would be enough to disqualify him. So I don't know. I forgot to mention the Orthodox, who have their own view of what Israel should be, and all of these parties, uh, the only way they can survive is to combine with each other and basically sell. If it's the Likud, to sell the Orthodox enough goods in order to be able to be supported by them. So no, I don't. Under this system, I don't see how it can lead to something good and not more of the same, actually.
So let's turn the situation around and look at it from a different angle. You've described the situation on the ground, the nation's thinking. You're in a position, Ofer, you understand the scriptures. Can you bring some understanding, some biblical understanding to this situation? What is God doing or allowing in Israel at this time? What has got to happen?
Well, we began by saying Israel, whose vision?
Yeah.
And obviously, it's going to be God's vision. And I believe God is working it out. There are several things that I think are that challenge us in our faith and system, believers like this. For instance, and this is not new. This has been a centuries old question, like the whole thing of theodicy, which means if God is good, how can he allow evil to flourish like it does? Why are things not happening according to the way we thought the scriptures are going to play out? And the obvious answer to that, or partial answer, won't satisfy our curiosity, but would challenge us. First of all, God is not changed; He never changes. Secondly, he is sovereign, completely sovereign, utterly sovereign. If the scriptures teach something about God, is that he is sovereign. There's no system on earth, not democracy, not tyrannical regimes. No one can uh, no one can shut God out from their own system, and so he works within it to bring his own um, his own ends, which to us doesn't make any sense so many times. When we think God should turn right, he turns left when things happen this way. And we that's part of our challenge as believers, to stay put, to first of all to know God. We must know God in all his attributes and character, because that's the basis of everything. Otherwise, secondly, we must know how to read the scriptures in a way that doesn't interpret them according to our wishes or vision. And thirdly, to understand that God is working out something that will end fully and completely in his kingdom, with him as king. He will he will judge the earth, but in his own time. Someone said just a little while ago, that I read this, that judgment and justice, God's justice and judgment, is not mechanical. In other words, and Job and his friends argued about that. But in other words, God doesn't immediately judge something, nor does he punish immediately. And we can explain it in many ways, but there is a time that God will absolutely, to the last minute detail, will judge all things in his time, and he will bring it up. Now, for us, under this prayer, obviously, um, we have to know God in order to not only survive, but to be able to stand before him. Let me give you an example, just a short little example. Um, Daniel and his friends were brought among many other young people to Babylon, to the palace, offered the best of everything Babylon had. They had just gone through exile. They've seen Jerusalem conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, not destroyed yet, but conquered. They've seen the temple, God's house, ravaged from its riches and everything. They were taken to Babylon, and they were being taught for several years. They were being taught the wisdom of Babylon. How can four teenagers withstand this kind of thing? And the answer to that is, one, I believe they knew that God was supreme. He was he you know the belief system in those among the heathen was whoever won a battle or a war or conquered a nation, their gods were stronger. And Daniel never got confused about that. His God was supreme, his God was sovereign, and his God had a plan and a purpose and a word, and he was not going to live any other way. That takes a knowledge. That takes a knowing of God. It was not just a simple thing for him, and we must be that way too. And if we don't know these things, I'm afraid that we are going to see many more difficult situations that are going to challenge everything we believe about God. Nevertheless, if we know him, we'll not only survive it, but be able to stand before him in the last days this way.
You've been listening to Ofer Amitai, a Messianic pastor in Jerusalem, and we'll hear more from Ofer on next week's programme. The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish believers and Arab or Palestinian Christians living in Israel and the wider Middle East. If you'd like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please visit our website, olivetreefund.org. Meanwhile, join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.